And of course, they got more money last year, but it's just Zaslav's different. The office is different. And there's also a lot of different things happening.
There's a strange corporate culture in the history of Warner Brothers that stretches back decades. That it's like no matter who runs it, no matter who's in charge, things are always backwards, and it's always kind of a disaster. I've joked with Mike on this show numerous times about the countless billions of dollars that have been spent on unmade Superman movies and stuff like that. It's like no matter who's in charge of Warner Brothers, no matter what iteration is, there's always seems to be issues. And this dates back to the merger with Discovery and Warner. And Zaslav comes from Discovery. Like he made his bones with Dr. Pimple Popper and whatnot. And
Yeah.
he is largely looked at as one of the worst executives in this. He was so over he's so over his head when it comes to stuff like running a studio. Warner Brothers has been a disaster since Zaslav took over. Right?
Yeah.
It's been the one shining, like I think they had a couple, like last year was a decent year for them. They had Dune 2 and Oppenheimer were successes, in Barbie. Like they did good
Yes.
with that, but before that, complete and total disaster. DC has been a complete nightmare for them. They've had to reboot
Yeah.
it because things were so bad. Like, and this again, the regime before didn't do a great job either. It's just the people who are running Turner seem to have their stuff together. Now that's not the case. Like Zaslav
That seems to
is
be
left.
kind of see, this seems to happen today. You talk about going all the way back to Jamie
Mm-hmm.
Kellner and Warner Brothers buying Turner. It's just that Turner has their stuff together, then they get bought by a company that doesn't. And it turns out that maybe Turner should have been the company that bought out the other one.
Well, that's the
It's
thing when
like,
you,
why was Discovery buying Warner Brothers? Turner.
because
It's like, that doesn't make sense to me.
well,
It's like,
typically
why
what
was
happens,
AOL buying Warner Brothers? That should have not been that way. It should have been the
they
other
were
way around.
the stronger
Um,
company. It's a stronger company typically take when you have these mergers, the
yes.
company that's technically worth more money tends to run the show. And at the time, like we'll go back to 2000, AOL was a monolith in the
Yeah.
world. Like they made so much money so fast. Remember, Mike, when we were kids, you would get AOL discs in the mail.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
Oh, yeah.
here's AOL. Here's AOL. You have AOL now. Like but again, that merger was a complete disaster, not for Turner or Warner, but for AOL. The
Yeah.
AOL completely died off that, and it's eventually it was spun out, and we get to where we are now. Turner wasn't exactly. If you read the Nitro book, which has its flaws, Guy Evans I think did a decent job talking about Turner corporate culture. Turner corporate culture had its issues too. So it's like no matter who's kind of at the helm of this, it's always been kind of a disaster. We're not exactly talking about Disney here, realistically
No.
speaking.
And I think we're also in a period where all these major companies are struggling because
Yes.
they even though they had the keys to the faucet, they tried to get into the streaming game and these massive contract for content purchases where you have like somebody spending $1 billion for the Friends catalog, and it's completely that kind of mismanagement is really just hurt these studios. It's ironic that you were talking about how badly the DC universe has been mismanaged, and The Rock was a huge part of that. And
Yes, he was.
now he's over there helping run TKO. And I mean, I honestly think that kind of culture. I think that massive culture, because if you look at Marvel, once you get further away from the Marvel Studios days and more closer when Disney was more in control of things after they bought it, and you're getting away from that first kind of prototype they built, it's unquestionably worse. And I just think there's just too many people. There's too many cooks in a chicken when you're doing these things. And
The Dis sorry.
but it's like that's the biggest problem they have right now, and that's one thing I think is important for AEW getting this deal is because there's not a lot of money people are wanting to spend, and you're looking at companies that are kind of in very much in flux. So them being able to get a 4 or 5 year deal right now and a good one is great news for them. And people trying to say it's just matching what they were getting last year after they added Collision. That's just stupid. I mean, if people are actually reporting that, I mean, I mean, I maybe it's coming from WWE PR, like
Yeah.
Tony said. I do know that some places. I remember the Torch reported from WWE sources that CM Punk was going to AEW. I mean that this has been a thing going on for a while, and I'll just say this as a reporter for a long time: don't listen to the competition. If don't write based off what the competition tells you in the story. Find somebody else that's either neutral or knows what's going on, or you trust, and go from there. And I think he's got a right to be angry about that. But at the same time, it's like this is just taking so much. It's taken so much focus off of what of enjoying the product or even the time we're in that it's insane.
It's this rush to be first, right?
Yeah.
Especially with so many wrestling reporters who don't have training in media ethics or understanding how to source material, right? It's this idea that we have to run based on a subscription based model, that we have to get the scoops, the Z out as soon as humanly possible, regardless of whether or not stuff is real. And WWE PR, we're talking about sharks, man. They know that
Yeah.
if they get 2 weeks of people tweeting about how it's a worse offer, that's going to become the narrative. And then it doesn't, then
Yes.
reality doesn't matter. All that matters is who shapes the narrative.
Yeah. And they really have a. I mean, I covered the Russian disinformation campaign back in 2015, 2016. And a lot of people believe this thing never happened. Well, it did. I mean, people got convicted and got prison time for it. There's evidence of it. I wrote about it for the Sydney Morning Herald, and corporate culture was already dabbling in that, and they've really come to perfect it. And I mean, people are like, well, why would Elon Musk buy Twitter and sell, on use every dime he has in his fortune? Well, because there's ways to make money off that. I mean, it's a
Mm.
great service if you're a corporation or you're a political entity and you want to get a message out, or you want to manipulate behavior or something, which is what marketing and advertising basically is. And I'm not trying to sound conspiracy minded or anything, but it's a good tool to do that. And if you look at
It's
how, I mean,
it's a
WWE,
legitimate thing. It's
yeah,
like,
I mean, WWE's loaded up Reddit with so many
yeah.
of their own mods, and it's so much of their stuff can be traced back to them. And there's a real reason why. I mean, look at the Fast Nationals every week. I mean, it's like they don't even try to hide it, which was ironically what a lot of the Russians did back in 2015, 2016. You caught them because they were so arrogant, they didn't even try to cover their tracks. And that was people over here too. And that were, part of that. But, and a lot of them got jail time because of, doing stuff like voter fraud and things like that. But talking about in a corporate realm and how this relates to wrestling, it's that, they're not even covering up their fingerprints on this. I mean, it's when you see Fast Nationals on a couple sites, and then all of a sudden everybody's, sharing that. It's like after a while you'd say, you know what? Wouldn't I be sick of being burned by this after a while?
Hey,
It's
hey, BJ, you've been around a while, and you've been a part of many different publications, both I guess pro wrestling and civilian. We'll just say the rest of the world is civilian. My military speak. How do I get somebody to send me these Fast Nationals? Like, how would I even go about doing that? Because
you would have
because
to
I'll
get
be
it from
honest,
the
BJ, I
companies.
do really want someone to send them to me because I want to read the email live on the show and expose who sent it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy. Go to the boards that are posting them. I mean, there's a few that do it every week when they do it.
Yeah.
I think the Forbes guy gets it quite a bit. And they're not even really covering it up. And I think that's kind of the issue where it doesn't pay to have credibility. It pays to be somebody's kind of being rigged for somebody to slant things for them because you'll get favor from them. Maybe you'll get some tickets. You'll have a bunch of fans loving your reporting. I
Cheese
mean, a
boards.
lot of that, a lot of what we're seeing now is what we saw like happening with partisan political media through the 90s and the 2000s. And it's now grown to where you're seeing it in sports, where there's almost like an Alex Jones for everything. There's an Alex Jones for pro wrestling. There's an Alex Jones for politics. There's an Alex Jones for sports, or a Rush Limbaugh, or throw in your liberal counter or progressive counterpart. And And so when you want to get real information, it's hard to do. It's like, I mean, the guy who's the best at it's Dave Meltzer, and he's the most vilified person in the wrestling business. It's like, why? What's Dave done to anybody? You know, you may not like his tweets, you may not like what he says on the radio. I mean, on the radio, but guess this is his opinion. You know, if you want information, guess where everybody still goes to at the end of the day. You know, and it's like people just need to relax a little bit, and they need to understand it. You know, this isn't worth getting fired up for. Like the mutant button on Twitter is the greatest thing ever invented on that thing. And,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
I used a lot too. And it's like, you know, you can take the negativity out of it, you know, but I also like information. I like to report. And some people are going to like it, some people don't.